Hey there, this is Logan. I decided I wanted to just jump right in and talk about some of the books I've read recently. The first one is A Lion Among Men by Gregory Maguire. This is the third book in the Wicked series, which tells of the Wicked Witch story, right, from a different perspective. And, you know, I loved Wicked. I thought Son of a Witch was even better. Lion Among Men just felt like this boring, long story that didn't really get anything interesting to happen. What it does is it centers around the lion. His name is Burr, and the cowardly lion, that is, and why we get to know why he's cowardly, what's happened in his life. It also centers around Yakel. You may remember Yakel as the old woman who kind of drifts in and out of Ephalba's life during Wicked. You know, then we also get to see the Clock of the Time Dragon again. We get to see the Grimoire, the book, the magic book that Ephalba had. All of these characters are tied all together, and all the characters in the book and the clock, all of these come together in a central story. It's okay. It's nothing special. What it felt like was kind of a 300-page filler or connection between what's gonna what happened in Son of a Witch and what's gonna come next. Like, who knows what comes next, what the fourth novel will be, but this certainly just felt like a big setup for that. And, you know, it was a little boring, I won't lie. The next up is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. Gaiman has an amazing ability to create worlds that no one else has even created before. And they're so novel, like American Gods and Stardust. I love it. This book was written for a younger audience, you know, and it centers around a young boy. What happens is some ghosts in a graveyard adopt a young boy who's a sole survivor of his family's massacre. There's an evil plot that the ghosts have to protect the young boy, and he gets ghost-like powers even though he is in fact human. It's pretty interesting. It really starts out really interesting and fun. It ends pretty well with a big thriller, but in the middle it drags a little bit. There's some, you know, and I thought, well, maybe that's just me because I'm not a teen or I'm not a tween anymore. But I loaned it to my boss's 11-year-old daughter, and she had the same reaction. I didn't prompt her with any of that. She wrote me a book review and said, yeah, it was fun in the beginning and the end, and it drug in the middle. So there you have it. Fun. Not the most exciting book, but, you know, fun. If you have a tween that you want to get into some sci-fi or different worlds, this might be good. The next up I have is Almost Like Being in Love. Now, I bought this book, well, I put it on my Amazon wish list quite a while ago, and I don't remember doing it, but it was there, and Christian got it for me for Christmas. What's funny is the story revolves around two boys who fall in love at prep school in their senior year. One's the jock, one's the artsy, nerdy guy, right? Then they go off to New York for the summer after, and they are madly in love, and then college comes, and they go to different colleges. One goes to USC, and one goes to Harvard. They don't see each other for 20 years, the loves of their life, blah, blah, blah. Long lost love, etc. Well, what's funny, what's ironic is I didn't know about this. I didn't know anything about the story. Christian may or may not have, but Christian went to USC and I went to Harvard, so that was kind of a fun little thing for us to read. We both read it over New Year's Eve at our New Year's Eve retreat that we went to up in the mountains of Santa Cruz. It was fantastic. We had time to read, and it was a fun book. The coolest thing about this is that it's written in this really clever writing style. It's told through the series of emails and letters and journal entries and newspaper clippings and law office memos. It's very fun. There's very little dialogue or narrative, and I think that really makes it interesting. So much gay fiction is so bad. They rely on poorly written sex scenes to make people want to read it. This doesn't have any of that filler or typical stuff. It's just really fun, interesting story, and I highly recommend it. Again, Almost Like Being in Love by Steve Kluger. Definitely worth a read. If you actually, one more thing, if you remember, you might remember my blog post about Josh Kilmer Purcell's books and Alison Burnett's book, Christopher, and his other one. Those, I feel, are fantastic gay fiction. This fits right up there with them. So if you liked those, you might like this too. Next up was something I read while I was in Mexico, Gods Behaving Badly by Marie Phillips. This is an interesting one. You might wonder, well, what ever happened to the Greek gods, or where are they now, right? Well, Marie does a good job of trying to explain what might what her idea of where they might be and what's going on. So all the famous gods, Greek gods that you know and love, are living in a flat in London, kind of incognito, and their powers are waning. They don't really know why, but Athena, the goddess of wisdom, is trying to figure out a solution to this. Every time they use their power, they feel the weakening of their existence. So, as gods do, they still fight and have quarrels. And in this book, it centers around Aphrodite convincing Eros, her son, to play a trick on Apollo, who is so madly in love with himself. And, he's just a god of sex. Or, well, not really, but that's what he is in this book. And so she convinces Eros, Cupid, to make Apollo fall in love with a mortal woman who is in fact not in love with Apollo in return. So Apollo is all angst-ridden, and it's kind of, there's some funny stuff going on in there until this climactic apocalyptic situation arises where the Earth is near extinction because of this trick. And so Artemis, Apollo's twin sister, becomes the protagonist, and she and an unsung or unexpected human hero of old have to go down to Hades and save the day. It's definitely a fun read. It's light. Again, God's Behaving Badly by Marie Phillips. Pick it up. It's fun, it's quick, and I enjoyed it. Finally, Ender in Exile by Orson Scott Card. All right. I loved Ender's Game. Ender's Shadow was even better. And then I loved the Shadow series. What this does, what Ender in Exile is all about, is telling the story of Ender from the time battle school ends and the war is won to Speaker for the Dead. So what happens in that time? Well, there's a 2-year faster than light space trip where 40 years passes on Earth, 2 years passes for Ender and Valentine. My problem with the book was it felt jilted, and it felt like a band-aid between Ender's Game and the Speaker for the Dead series. And it just, there's so many separate parts where Ender was not, there was no central theme. It just felt like these different stories that Card had envisioned one day, over time, and tried to piece them all together in one book to try and draw some continuity. It doesn't really work because we're constantly jumping out of not just one character's head to another in the same story. That'd be great and fine, which we did in a lot of the other stories, but instead we're jumping like whole worlds apart into whole different stories and how do they relate, and we go over to Ganges wherever Lomi is, and Ender has to go there. Like, what's this all about? So I was kind of, I just was not particularly a big fan of that. Felt jilted and not well written, quite honestly. I'd never noticed, maybe I need to go back and reread, but I've never noticed his stuff, but his religious views coming in through his book so much until I read this. So here's one. So there's this young girl on the trip, the space flight with Ender, and she kind of falls in love with him, and so they have this conversation. Alessandra is her name. She says, "I don't know, back on Earth people married later and later and had sex earlier and earlier. It was wrong to divide them. I know, but who can say which direction was wrong? Maybe the biology of our bodies is wiser than all the reasons for waiting to marry. Maybe our bodies want to raise children when we're still young enough to keep up with them." Okay, maybe it's not terrible, but it's certainly it's weird. It totally jumps off the page. It's not part of the story. And then earlier, this is Valentine. Valentine, who I just had, you would not expect this to come from Valentine. She's thinking to herself while she's thinking about this guy, and she says, "As Father always said, monogamy is what works best for any society in the long run. That's why half of us are born male and half female. So we come out even." Blech. Sorry, I just, over it. Ender in Exile, Orson Scott Card, fucking gag me with a rusty dildo, for God's sake. Seriously? Does that really have to, fine, he's Mormon, he's got his religious views, and he created a great world, and I love it. I just wish he wouldn't have to, fucking pound us in the head with, monogamy and heterosexuality and why they're so right for society and the world in this distant future. Anyway, that being said, if you're an Ender fan, you've already read it, you already have your opinion. If you're not an Ender fan, if you're not an Ender diehard, that is, don't bother. It's not really worth it. Go back and reread Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow. You'll have much more fun. So that's 5 books that I've read over the last couple months, and let me know what you think. If you read them, let me know what your opinions are. If you haven't read them and you go pick one up because of this review, also let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys think of my reviews, and also I'd love to hear what your reviews are. Cool. Take care, and I'll hopefully be back with some more book reviews when I have some more time to read. All right.